Hello and welcome to this video. I'm Marcus Hayes, and today I've got a bit of an update on the ST170 engine that will soon be finding its way into Maude, my Maude'S Mark II Escort.
Over the last couple of weeks we've had some really bad weather here in England. A couple of storms have hit us and it's been really windy and rainy. I've been keeping my head down anyway, so the weather hasn't hindered me too much. I did manage to buy some gaskets and seals for the new engine though from my friends at Burton Power. See the description for a link to their website, and I managed to fit those gaskets and seals yesterday. Also, I've done a couple of little jobs on the engine just to make it look a bit better, and that was sparked by a YouTuber who got in touch with me and kindly offered to hydro bit a couple of parts for the new engine, and I can't wait to show you those.
Right, it's a bit windy around here today, so I hope you can hear what I'm saying. I'll just talk you through all the jobs that I've done on this engine over the last week or so in the order that I did it all. Now, the first thing I did was I gave the block a coat of lacquer. I basically found a can of Halford's lacquer in my garage, so I thought, why not? It'll either keep the engine looking better for longer, or it'll just start peeling off and looking a mess, but time will tell. The next thing I did is I replaced all the core plugs in the block, which I know is something that some people say don't bother doing unless they're leaking, but there was quite a lot of rust on the block around this side, so maybe this core plug was leaking when it was in the Focus. I very much doubt it. It's probably more likely to be a coolant leak from a hose or whatever, but you know, I had a set of these in my garage anyway, so I thought I might as well change them. Now, the way I do it is I put a chisel on one side of it and just whack it, and then that normally makes the core plug swivel in the hole, and then you can just grab hold of it with a pair of mole grips and pull it out. Now, that's exactly what happened when I did this one. But these ones are so small that it actually ended up pushing them right into the engine. Now, I'm not sure if you was to let it go, whether it'd fall into the water jacket or whatever. I don't think so, but I wasn't sure, so I just kept hold of it, and then I was able to reach in there with some long-nosed mole grips and just rotate it and then pull it out. And then before I fitted the new ones, I cleaned the hole out to make sure there's no debris or rust on there or anything, and then tapped the new ones in. I did put a tiny smear of whatever gasket sealant I could find at the time. I'm not sure whether they're supposed to go in dry or not, but it was hardly anything. Now, I tapped them in using this drift set that my brother got me one Christmas. Basically, that goes on like that, and then you just whack it with a hammer, and it basically helps you keep it nice and level, because it's got to go in even. But a socket on a bar does the same job. In fact, on this one, I didn't have a drift or a socket big enough, so I just gradually went round the edge, you know, with the biggest socket that I did have. It's not really the way you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to put it in even, but as long as you do it bit by bit, very slowly, and as long as it ends up in there nice and level. As you've already seen, I've given the water pump housing and the water pump a quick spray with the same silver that I've done the block in, and I gave it a quick coat of lacquer as well. And I've changed the gasket that goes between this and the block. It's just like a metal gasket, and it's quite cool because it's got little tabs on it, which means you can sort of lock it to the water pump housing, and then you know it's not going to move like while you're fitting the water pump housing, because you can actually remove these without removing the cam belt. If you pull it forward slightly on the pulleys, that makes life easier. But I have actually had the cam belt off since taking this off to paint it, so but I'll come to that in a minute. So the next gasket I tackled is the gasket that goes between this, which is the lower sort of front cover of the engine, but it's also the oil pump on a Z-Tech. So yeah, the gasket between this and the block, that required me to remove the cam belt. I did have to drop the sump. Now, to do that on these, because the original sump is 2p, so I had to remove this piece. Then that meant I could undo the oil pickup pipe, which is here. Now, I won't be using that original oil pickup pipe because Scott Norris sent me this 1800 CVH one from one of his spare Sierra engines, which I'm going to be using with the G19 sump that is getting made for this engine. Massive thanks again for the pickup pipe, Scott. So yeah, once I got the oil pickup pipe off, I bolted this part of the sump back on just to keep it all in one piece. And then I was able to undo this part of the sump from the block, which is all the bolts along there, both sides. Now, once the sump was off, I was then able to just remove the oil pump by undoing these bolts. And then I use this gasket scraper to remove the old gasket. It came off pretty easy actually, and then just use this afterwards just to make sure there's no debris left on the surface. And then I was able to bolt the oil pump back in. Now obviously there's a crank seal in there as well, which I obviously removed from the oil pump, and then I put the oil pump back on without the seal in. And you basically got to make sure that this oil pump is proper lined up. I can probably insert some photos, but basically when the seal's not there, there's 3 little tabs that basically they nearly touch the crank, and basically you want to get it so that the gap in between those little tabs and the crank is even. Basically just make sure it's not touching one of them, because the gap is so small, and then you know you've got it aligned properly. As well, make sure you know it's the same both sides here, and then you can torque the bolts up. And then after that, I pushed in the new seal. It's basically behind there. Now obviously when you look at this compared to this, it does make me wish maybe I should have painted the oil pump as well, but then that would have meant like to, you know, thoroughly clean the oil pump. I don't have like a parts washer or anything, you know. It was just easier for me to take it off, put it in a bag so it doesn't get dirty while I'm scraping the old gasket off and that, and then just bolt it back on. But that bit's so low down on the engine, you know, you won't really be able to see that. After that, I wanted to change the rear main seal, also known as a rear crank seal, I think, and this gasket here, which basically goes in between that seal's carrier and the block. The problem is, with it on the stand, you can't do that. So I needed to hoist the engine up so I can take the stand off. And then I had an idea to do a couple of other things while the engine was off the stand, and that didn't exactly go to plan. So the plan was to fit this light flywheel, which I recently replaced the ring gear on. This was the one that was fitted to this flywheel, and I was having problems before with the starter motor engaging with this. So I thought maybe it'd be a good idea to test whether this new ring gear is going to improve the way that the starter engages with the flywheel whilst the engine is out of the car. So I bolted the flywheel to the crank, and then I bolted this spare alloy RS2000 bell housing to the engine. And then the idea was to bolt the starter motor to the bell housing and then just connect it to a battery to turn the engine over, and then just see if it was making the grinding noise when the starter engages with the ring gear, or whether it sounds how it should. I also had the idea of maybe filling the engine up with oil and then hooking up my oil pressure gauge to here where the oil pressure switch is, and then I thought I'd be able to turn the engine over and just check if I've got good oil pressure. And I thought I might even be able to do a compression test. What I realised once I'd bolted the bell housing onto the engine is that these stock Zetec sumps are basically in the way of where you would bolt the starter motor to this bell housing, which is here. Now obviously I could have, you know, took this home and took a grinder to it to cut a bit out of it. I've even got another sump that I could have used on the bottom of the engine that Tony gave to me, but that seemed a bit long-winded, so I just basically decided that I'm not going to bother testing the ring gear and possibly the oil pressure and the compression test until I get my sump back from G19. So with that idea out of the window, obviously unbolted the flywheel from the engine, but before I put it on the stand, I did change that gasket and that seal, and that's basically the same process as doing the oil pump one at the front. You know, you want to make sure that it's aligned before you do it up, and then you put the rear main seal in afterwards. Now one gasket that I haven't bought yet is the one that goes here in between the block and the breather box, but I might actually be using the breather box that's already fitted to the black top that's in Maude now, so there's no rush to get that gasket just yet. Another thing I have fitted is the crank sensor, and I've spaced it away from its bracket using little copper washers, because that's the other problem with this particular light flywheel. The crank sensor actually rubs against here if you don't space it out. For the record, if you're looking for a light flywheel for your Zetec, I recommend you contact a company called Turbo Sport. I'll leave a link to their website in the description of this video. I've got their flywheel fitted to the Mark 1 and I have none of these problems with it. So yeah, that's all the gaskets and seals that I've done on this engine. There's not loads left to buy for this engine before it's actually ready to go in the car. I still need to get an inlet manifold so that I can run the CBR 900 carbs that Johnny Bamber sorted me out. Thanks again for those, Johnny, mate. I'm also probably going to get an adjustable vernier pulley for the exhaust cam, because if you retard the exhaust cam slightly on these engines, it can give you a little bit more BHP at the top end. Best results are normally found by retarding the exhaust cam in between 6 and 9 degrees. These pulleys don't actually have a keyway, so you can technically do it without an adjustable vernier, but if I'm going to do it, I'd rather be able to adjust it 1 degree at a time while the car's on the rolling road, and then you can see for definite whereabouts you're getting the best results. Obviously still need to fit the G19 sump once he's finished sorting it out for me. to be honest, if he doesn't get back to me for another couple of weeks, it'll probably do me a favour because, as I said, I've got bills to pay at the moment. I'm going to be running the engine on an ME100, which is an ECU from Motorsport Electronics. I'll leave a link to their website in the description. And that has actually already been delivered. I wasn't in, so I need to go and pick that up from the courier's depot. So yeah, not many more parts to buy. Hopefully I'll be able to get it in the engine bay soon. But what I'm going to do now is bolt a load of parts to the engine that are going to make it look a million times better. Alright, so as you can see, I've also painted this bottom pulley and this cover, which is also the mount when these are fitted to Maude'S and Focuses, with the same silver spray can that I've done the block in, and I gave it a quick coat of lacquer as well. This pulley here has actually been zinc plated silver. I basically must have got a spare one done when I got all the pulleys and the alternator bracketry and stuff plated silver for the Mark 1. So yeah, that looks pretty cool. But check out these covers. Hydro dipped by a guy called Kieran, and this paint splatter effect. Basically he got in touch and offered to do the job for free and just asked me to choose what pattern I want, and yeah, I think it looks pucker. The film is actually a clear film, so he had to paint the parts white first and then hydro dip them. And this cover, that's the one that Fred painted for me before in Olympic blue, and it was all reacting and stuff. It wasn't the best cover to use, to be honest, which is why I decided to use that on Maude's engine, because the one that came with this engine is a lot better condition, so I was going to get that powder coated for the Mark 1. Kieran has his own YouTube channel. He's called Little Red Fiesta on there. I'll leave a link to it in the description of this video. Definitely go and check it out and give him a sub. He's building a sick Z-Tech powered Mark 1 Fiesta. Also on his channel you'll see the video he made when he was doing these hydro dipping bits for me, including all the grief he had to go through to strip this cover back and paint it white before he could even do the hydro dipping. Kieran's also on Instagram at Little Red Fiesta. If you could all go and give him a follow to help me say thanks for doing these bits for Maude's engine, I'd really appreciate it. So when Kieran got in touch about doing these covers, I wasn't going to tart up this engine much at all. I was going to paint the block all along because it helps see oil leaks, but other than that I wasn't really going to fuss with this engine. But once, you know, he got the idea in my head, then I thought, yeah, why not, you know, experiment with trying to paint some of these bits at the front silver to match the block, just to make the whole engine look a bit better. Just trying to use my imagination and imagine what it would look like in there. I think it's going to look mad. Mint engine and an old banger. Now, because I'm clumsy and I don't want to ruin any of these covers, I'm actually going to remove them again now from the engine, and I'll just store them on the Mark 1 engine, just so they're out of the way, and I'll just put the unpainted one back on until I get the engine in Maude. So I've switched the covers round, and got to be honest, I do think this paint splatter effect on the white cover looks good against the Olympic blue paint. It's definitely got me thinking that maybe I should do something similar to this car. I'm probably still going to powder coat the other rocker cover black, but maybe I could do the spark plug lead cover and the front cover in paint splatter, and maybe if there's anything else in the engine bay, like maybe the lid for the washer bottle. But yeah, definitely looks good against the Olympic blue. I'm not able to fit this to this engine because with the alternator setup fitted, basically you have to sort of bend the plastic to get it around it, and when I tried the other day the film has cracked there. But what I'm probably going to do is trim a little bit off this cover. If I need to remove the cover for any reason, I don't want to have to remove the alternator setup. And once I know how much I do need to cut out, then I can copy that cut out on the cover that is going to be used for this engine and then get it dipped. So yeah, for now this will get stored away in bubble wrap somewhere where I can't damage it, and then this cover can sit on this engine while Esther's hibernating. And here's Maude's engine, looking not so great now, is it, with this boring cover on it? Hello, right, so a couple of days have passed since the last clip. I got chatting to Rob around the garage the other day, so didn't get round to ending this video. But before I do end this video, I've got something to show you that I've had through the post. In this box that I've received from Motorsport Electronics is the ME100 ECU that will be running Maude's new ST170 engine. There's the unit there. Got the connection cables as well. And as always, I've gone for the plug and play loom, which basically means you just got to plug it in, don't have to worry about wiring up connectors or anything. Makes life a whole lot easier. I'll go into more detail in future videos about the features of the ME100, why I've chosen to use it, and why I'm not going to be using the Maude'S that's already fitted to Maude. But for now, I just want to take this opportunity to send a massive thanks out to Matt and the rest of the team at Motorsport Electronics for doing me such a good deal on my ME100. This is the third ECU that I've bought from Motorsport Electronics now, and they're always a pleasure to deal with. If any of you out there are in the market for an ECU for your car, definitely check out Motorsport Electronics. I'll leave a link to their website in the description of this video. It doesn't matter whether your setup is carb, injection, naturally aspirated or forced induction, they will have an ECU that will run your engine. Also, check out the Motorsport Electronics YouTube channel, which was really helpful for me when I was trying to get the ME221 ECU that I've got fitted to Fiesta up and running. Before I go, I want to send a massive thanks out to Kieran, aka Little Red Fiesta, for doing such an epic job on the hydro dipped covers for Maude's new engine. Let me know what you guys think of the hydro dipped covers, and also let me know if I should do the same effect on the covers for the engine in the Mark 1. If everyone who follows me that's on Instagram could please go and follow Little Red Fiesta, that would be great, just to help me show my appreciation for doing such a good job. I'll leave a link to his Instagram in the description of this video. Other than that, I'm going to end this video here. If you did think it was any good, please do give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Click subscribe and activate the notification bell to be kept right up to date with any other videos that I post in the future. Make sure you check out my Facebook and my Instagram, and I'll leave the links you need for that in the description, along with my email address for anyone who wants to contact me. If you would like to purchase stickers to help support the channel, details of that will also be in the description. But other than that, until next time, thanks for watching.